Hi, my name is Pete. I play a half-orc barbarian named Bronson Celtigar, and this is the post-campaign spotlight.
Well, hey, thanks for being here. How does it feel to be the undisputed world champion of D&D?
Oh God, pretty good, pretty good. Pretty happy with the way that everything panned out.
You should be. You should be. Quite the accolade there. You collected all the gym badges. You restored the family name. You found your long lost missing son. You've been pretty busy.
Yeah, did everything the right way, which surprisingly, uh, at the beginning of this, I like, I had just sort of planned to be the heavy, right? Uh, there wasn't really a plan to become the world champion. But then, as we went farther and farther and farther, it became more and more of a like an attainable goal to Bronson. Uh, and then, by the end of it, when everything was sort of like starting to fall apart, it was still incredibly important to feel like he had done everything the right way. Like I had a sneaking suspicion that if we didn't have all the challenge badges, that for some reason something wasn't going to be legitimate, and it just irked me. I was like, I got to do it, the right way.
Well, mission accomplished. But I want to rewind a little bit, and I want to start. My first question is the same question I ask everybody, and it's a very high level question. What was your role in the party?
Oh, I was supposed to be the muscle. I think originally, as envisioned, I was supposed to make sure that Gator didn't get um an early demise. That was pretty much the code, was just like, make sure that Gator's mouth doesn't end up writing a check that he can't cash.
There was another player that introduced you to the campaign, and that was the handler of Gator. So, was that, a little understanding between the two of you? Like, hey, you can join this campaign, but you have to make sure I don't die. Uh,
Uh, I don't know. I'm trying to think back to when Kuma and I were brainstorming some ideas, and I think he just was like, like once like it was established that Bronson was going to be in the mix, I think it really kind of solidified some of the stuff that he wanted to do, and he was like, "Oh, this is going to be perfect." And we're friends outside of the game, and now we can be friends inside of the game. And so I was like, "All right, man, I'll roll with whatever you want to do."
it was a bit of an odd couple situation, but it worked well because where Bronson was brave and courageous, Gator was a little cowardly and reserved, right? Just literally
Yeah.
walking in the shadow of Bronson and being
Yeah, he was
perfectly
never
fine with that.
more than 5 feet away. I think at any given point, he was attached at my hip to ensure his own survival.
Yeah, I don't want to say that he held onto your pocket the entire quest there, but
Yeah,
he was definitely there and was smart enough to keep you within arm's reach, right?
yeah, he knew where his bread was bladed. you know, he never strayed too far from the guy who the menacing you know arbiter of axes and swords.
So right from the jump, that was pretty obvious. But how did Bronson feel about the other members of the party? Specifically Zinthral, who there was a
Oh,
some
yeah.
tension with for a while.
Yeah, I really honestly, as a player, loved that we had an imperfect party, in terms of like everyone had their own sort of agenda and goals, and had, you know everyone wanted to kind of sort of pursue their own goals while still, you know, doing the King's Road. But I know Zinthral, like, you know, if it had come between, you know, King's Road and his family stuff or anything like that, then those goals would have realigned and we would have had you know, significantly more drama. um and so just it seemed like for probably about like the first 3 quarters of the season, uh we were always kind of walking the tightrope of like, are they finally going to get into it? Like, are they finally going to throw down? And then we had, you know, situations like when he helped out with one of the tests, and Bronson was just beside himself because he wanted to do everything his, you know, his way. He didn't want a leg up, and he didn't want anybody to be able to hold anything over him saying like, oh well, you know, it's like you actually didn't pass this one, you know. He felt cheated, and like, so that always was like kind of bubbling. You know.
There were times in the first half of the campaign where Bronson and Zinthral both were challengers on the King's Road. You know,
Mhm.
Zinthral was kind of the chosen golden son. He was the contender that the rest of the party was helping push along. You know, you were the entourage,
Mhm.
and then an opportunity arose where you said, "Well, we can have Bronson as the backup just in case things don't pan out with one. We have a spare." But in that regard, everything just seemed to come easier to Zinthral in all of those early challenges. He was succeeding, and for whatever reason, your luck was just terrible
Oh my god, yeah.
in the
I
beginning.
like, and Bronson was built well. Like, I made sure that like I had a goal for him, you know. It's like, all right, combat is going to be your thing. Generally he does very well, but for some reason, whenever it would come to one of the tests, I would just be like, "Oh god, here it goes again." And every time it would just be like poor rolls or just unfortunate circumstances,
Yep.
and it was just like, "Oh god." He's just going to limp his way through here. It's like, "Oh my god." He's like, you know, all this bravado and all this like amazing feats of strength, and then it comes to like, push this guy off a platform, and he can't do it for like 3 days.
At the time, it had to suck for you as a
Oh
player.
my god. Yeah.
But looking at the big picture now, and as a complete work, those early failures really made the successes at the end that much more satisfying,
Yeah,
right?
for sure. And it also made for just better time around the table. Like, I mean, like, if you steamroll everything, then you become like, it's really one dimensional and everyone's just like, "Oh, okay, you know, this is kind of how it is." And so having that like bitterness and, you know, added to Bronson as a character, and also made for supremely entertaining game sessions. You know.
It was certainly interesting to see a world class athlete who couldn't pick up a specific skill. You know,
Yeah.
it's like
Yep.
the fastest man on earth not being able to ride a bicycle.
Right,
You know,
exactly.
like just how frustrating
It's
that
like you got
is.
all the raw talent there. It's just for some reason it's just not clicking, man.
Yep. Yep. So when we first interviewed you for the show, the question
Mhm.
was posed: what portions of D&D do you prefer the most? Was it social interaction, exploration, or combat? And it was pretty well established right off the bat that combat is what you enjoy. Combat is what Bronson excelled in.
Mhm.
Did the encounters live up to the hype?
Oh yeah. Yeah. There was uh consistently uh it always felt like the other shoe was going to drop, you know, through just like being in a time crunch, or just, you know, understanding that like we're in public and we have to deal with this encounter before the police show up. I mean, like early on, that was definitely a thing with the town guards of like trying to be discreet while still like trying to hammer the hard way as bad as we could. And then we got pinned on, an entire dock fire pinned on us for a little while, so
Yeah, early on in the front half of the campaign, the party really had their wings clipped because it was like, let's injure some folks, but don't commit a felony, right?
right.
Like we don't want to kill anybody, and Rosa especially did not want you to kill anybody, so you were
Yeah.
limited in your actions. But halfway through the campaign, where your big boss, the main enemy of the story, went from being this gang that's troublesome to being this cult, which is pure evil. And then from
Yeah.
that point on, the handcuffs were off,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah, yeah. Bronson Unchained at that point. Like once, and honestly, like that balance was one of my favorite parts of this campaign was having Bronson not only have to like, he's fighting the duality of his existence, right? He's a half bloodthirsty orc raider, half, well educated, nobility. And so that, him leading into that, figuring out how far he wants to go down, either one of those paths was a lot of fun. And then also just uh the juxtaposition against Rosa. Up until she was just all on board with Darker Order has to die was always a fun balance of like, these people are trying to kill us, they will not show us any mercy, and if we let them live, they're going to continue to do terrible things. And so it's like the situation, almost like a trolley problem of like, okay, if we don't kill this one person, they're going to kill five other people, so what's the worst of the two? And so having to have those kinds of debates with the other characters and whatnot was always a fun time for me.
the word min maxer gets thrown around very easily these days when talking about D&D campaigns, and I'm not accusing Bronson of doing that.
Oh, for sure, 100%. I
Uh,
built him for that purpose. Like he is a min-max character. He just doesn't happen to be a very complicated min-max character.
sure, sure.
I mean, he's all I really had to do was make sure that strength got pumped, and that I had a couple of items that ensured that I was equipped to deal with certain circumstances. But like, yeah, he is for sure a min maxer, a min max character. But I will say, in my defense, turned out that I was the only martial character for like half this campaign, so it ended up being kind of a benefit. Was like, oh, okay, we gotta, especially when our wizard is an illusionist.
There were times when Bronson looked absolutely unstoppable, could not miss, could not be knocked down. How did that feel as a player?
It's I don't think it felt near as powerful as you would think. It was a sense of feeling like we weren't screwed in every situation. Like Bronson could take it on the chin, and even in a situation where he's about to die, I was never like, oh no, well, I'm bummed out because like this is going poorly. It's okay, all right, I can take this on the nose one more time. Let's just keep trying to push through it and see what happens. And generally that worked out pretty well. Like one of the reasons that I just tore into like combat just was knowing that, like, all right, well, even if something kills me outright, it can't really kill me outright on the first turn. So I knew that I with along with the healing and stuff like that, that I could really push him into some situations that, like, this could get you killed, but we're going to try and take everything out along the way.
So the challenge was always put on the DM of how do we make these combats interesting and challenging yet achievable, right? And
Yeah,
Bronson was the litmus test for, hey, what does this combat need to include in
yeah,
order to challenge Bronson? So there
yep,
was a constant reinvention of what type of attacks and situations and are there lair actions or legendary actions?
right.
All those things were done not to nerf Bronson, but to make it challenging.
Right. Yeah, and I will say, I think the back half of this campaign, you really found your stride in terms of making those things happen. Whether or not it was adding enough people into the action economy that like it's like, okay, well, you only get 3 attacks around and there's ten minions in here, so something's going to come through, or debilitating, either through poison or blindness or any of those things, or just not relying on AC. Like, I mean, like, it's like, yeah, it doesn't matter if you hit him. He's made of smoke, stuff like that. So that, I think, I remember you and I had talked about that a couple of times, with like, what can I do to, add this, to add challenge, and I remember giving you a couple of points of like, thinking outside the box, and I really think you did an awesome job of that. um Figuring just how to make it, not to where no one's going to get steamrolled, but then also you're also not just going, oh well, I'll just throw a, CR12 dragon at them and then, deal with that, you chumps, until that last session. uh and so I think that you as a DM grew immensely during the course of this campaign. I've seen a lot of DMs, that just kind of like, well, this is just kind of how I am as a DM, whether or not they're experienced or not. And then, like, it all stays fairly static. And I mean, that's cool. You get your story told and everything like that. But I definitely noticed uh, growth for sure, on everybody's part, but also on your part. And it's really nice to see a DM like grow and blossom during a campaign.
But the challenge is how do you keep it fresh,
Yeah.
right? And luckily, we had this wide universe of characters to draw inspiration from. Using
Yeah.
pro wrestlers as high
Yep.
fantasy bad guys. So being able to pull in bits of character there, that made my job much easier.
hmm
But
Yeah, tropes, and archetypes. Like when you have an idea of like, oh yeah, I could pull this. It just helps flesh things out so
mhm.
fast.
but then you can't repeat the same thing twice.
Sure.
you know and we could have had every one of your fights take place inside a wrestling ring, but
Right.
instead we just had the one,
Yep.
and everything else was a little bit different, so it stays fresh. The enemies stay fresh because each one has like a new ability that we haven't witnessed
hmm
before, a new challenge. And as the campaign really builds to a crescendo, the challenge rating goes up. The uh, your the enemies you're facing have more skills.
hmm
They're presenting new things. The area in which you're fighting is more treacherous than it was before. We went from a civilized community into a ghost town and
Yep.
almost another reality, and we had to go there. That was midway through the campaign when we're in Timber Clash, and you guys really feel like we've got the hard way cornered. We're going to turn things upside down. Then all of a sudden, boom, the Darker Order shows up. They're inviting Hellspawn into the battle, and now all of a sudden, the Young Lions are, everything's upside down. What do
Yeah, that was such a wild right turn. Like, because I thought the hard way was going to end up being like, maybe not the, like, once the Dark Order got involved, like I thought, okay, well, they'll be the prime, antagonists. But I figured that the hard way was going to just stick around and like pepper us and really be like problematic, and then to have that happen, like the timber clash stuff happen, and then it's like, oh, we're in a full on world ender campaign now. Okay.
Well, to be fair, you didn't leave me much of an option there. You guys blew up the hard way. You
Yeah.
put a bomb inside their headquarters while
Yeah.
everybody was there. So naturally, my hand was forced. And
Invariably, a D&D party will always become terrorists. At some point, they may not stay terrorists, but it really seems like every party dabbles in terrorism at some point.
is there a certain point in the story that really sticks out in your mind where the party came together to overcome a major challenge?
I mean, Timber Clash was pretty significant in that everyone had their own jobs, and then immediately after that, like the crap hit the fan at that point. We were all like celebrating, like, because everybody's like, Rosa was mending people up, and then Solomon was doing an awesome job on commentary, and Gator was doing the effects and managing and everything, and we had noise police in there, and then we all had to like get it straight for a boss fight, a pretty nasty one too. So that was a big one for me. And then I don't know if there's any like, I'll have to go back and listen and see if there are any particular points that I can like draw upon, but just like I really just like the fact that like the party always seemed to have each other's backs, like whenever anybody was going through anything that like was significant to them, whether or not it was Bronson and his family, or Rosa rolling up on Suplex City, and I think that at that point that's what really like uh that sort of hinged it for me, like in terms of like, oh well, this group is now a family.
Yeah.
Like this is no longer the King's Road, it's now like we are trying to make sure that one of our own is able to save her mother, and the destruction of her church was like, I think that's when it started hitting everybody on a visceral level,
Oh
rather
yeah.
than just sort of a like, oh, okay, well, you're my friend and I want to help you. I think that was a big part of when everybody really was like, uh young lions for life. At that point it was like, oh, okay, this is beyond a job, or a path. It's now that's what I felt, super connected to everybody.
That's when it really showed on the surface, but I think it starts even sooner than that. Back at Timber Clash, where Zinthral disappears, right? He's presumed dead,
Yep.
and then the party has to realign and figure out how to overcome this darker order enemy. And then, as a group, you're all complicit in this major crime against the hard way, nearly
Yeah.
blowing up the entire town. At that point, you all knew where the bodies were buried, and you kind of had to ride things out together. You
Yep.
know,
Yeah.
we lost Zinthro, we did this crime, and now we have to stick together. And then from then on, it was my job to raise the stakes. You know,
Yeah, I also think Rose's crisis of faith, with when she was debating whether or not she was going to leave the Young Lions, was like a huge galvanizing part for us as players at the table.
oh yeah,
That was just like a hugely emotional and like really um, strong storytelling, and just really really solid. Uh, uh, I'm trying to think of the word. Um,
it was a great bit of role playing on Rose's part
yeah,
to question, what her faith was
I
and
thought she was gone for sure too.
where her
Like that was
loyalties,
the other thing. I thought she was gone. I
But
was like, wow, this we're committed to the bit, but like, wow.
everybody had a chance to leave at one point,
Yep.
and Rosa could have left there on the airship after you guys did what you did to Ambrose, and Solomon went through his own metamorphosis,
Yep.
almost changed and took on a new identity. Zenthral did leave to
Hmm.
take on a vigilante quest, and Gator, you always had this kind of impression that he could just run away at any point. You
Yeah,
know,
he just vanish. Yeah, just
if
gone. Like,
things got a little too hairy, or if he got wrapped up in something else, he could just duck out. And, Bronson, of course, has his heart in two different places. Does he go back to his homeland? Does he go searching for his son? Or does he stay with the party? So
right.
everybody had these choices to make, and hopefully you felt like you had a lot of player agency about your choices and the weight of those choices.
Oh yeah.
Can you
Yeah,
speak a
for
little
sure.
to that?
Yeah, I mean uh, the choice to not kill my former wife's new husband. That one was like, I felt like that one was like, oh, he's just dangling the bait. But like, I don't know, like it was consistently for Bronson trying to not make the the dumb easy choice. I didn't want him to just be like, "Whoa, Hulk smash on everything." He understood that, and one of the guiding parts of his philosophy was that strength is key. Like, this the strong, you know, oppress the weak, and only the strong can defeat others with strength. And so there was a lot of trying to make the choice of let's be smart, but also uh that there's a lot of terrible people out there who don't need to continue being allowed to be terrible. And I think that's where Bronson and Solomon really kind of united, in an understanding that, like, there are terrible people out here. If we want to change the world, we can't carry everyone with us, especially not the terrible people. And so it was a pretty easily understood situation, like going back even to what was his name on the boat? We pushed him off.
Nix.
Nick's, yeah, yeah. Going back to Nick's, like, that's when Bronson and Sullivan for sure, like, we kind of had the understanding of like these guys are can't be left to their own devices. There's no redeeming them. And we we sort of dabbled with it with Mr. Mathman. He got out of there alive. He was probably the only hardway member that, other than, oh, I wasn't there for that. There was the recruit, the prospect, that the party became like really good friends with. Um,
Oh yeah. I don't recall his name, but he was
yeah,
very charismatic and likable.
yeah,
Solomon
yeah,
charmed the pants off of him, and he
yeah.
came along in the mystery machine back to the hunt cultists in the woods. Um,
Yeah, who knows whether or not he survived the club bombing, but like, yeah, I recall them being the only two that I could think of by, name, not name, but, by having an
mhm.
identified, like, we spared them, situation.
Well, as a
So
matter of
that
fact,
was
he
fun.
did survive because they paid a brothel to hold
Oh, that's
him
right.
for an extended period of time
Yeah,
to keep him occupied.
that's right. So see, we aren't total terrible people.
No, no.
Uh,
I mean,
just a little bit terrible people, which is, that's what you want. You can't be perfect.
Bronson struggled with uh, the balance of his human emotions versus his orcish heritage.
Mhm.
And every decision seemed to be a reflection of him trying to reconcile his own identity
Mhm.
throughout this journey. Now, by the end of this whole thing, you take down this cult, you slay the dragon, literally, and Bronson looks at the full breadth of decisions that he made. How does he feel about himself after it's all over?
I think I think he's just sort of shell shocked at first. It's going to take some time to really sort of like see where everything shakes out. He's reunited his family and got everyone back into a, at least, like pseudo legal, shipping existence. Like he's, putting the pieces back together after his grandfather basically, like, uh, ran the family's name into the ground. So I think that having the the King's Road under his belt, and I think the respect of his cousins, in terms of, not only did he go through the King's Road, he also managed to round everybody up and try and make sure that everybody was taken care of and got them back into their familial home. And uh, now he's able to bring his son home to not only his the home he was raised in, but the family that he was raised around too, without the ones who consistently pushed him to the outskirts. And so I think he really wants to try and build something for Norris, bring Norris into the fold, and then sort of get to not just be seen as like the two green guys in the Celtigar family. That's like, oh yeah, that's the prime the prime uh, uh, line. That's uh, the heir to the throne at there, or the the seed at that point. So,
Mm-hmm. So let's say Bronson has an extra ticket to WrestleMania. Who does he take with
oh, Rosa, like for sure.
him?
It's got to be Rosa, just like on the shoulders. She's give her uppies and then take her to do it. She's hands down been through. Well, I don't know. Solomon's sort of a mystery, so I'm not sure how much trauma that he's been through. But Rosa has had such a concentrated amount of heartache in a short amount of time that uh, Bronson is incredibly sympathetic to that, and wants to be a good person. Like Rosa's sort of like his compass in terms of whether or not something that he should be doing because it's right, or something that he should be doing because it makes him look strong. I mean, like she's definitely not afraid to tell him when he's acting like an ass, and I think he actually respects that a lot and needs that. And so she would definitely be the WrestleMania ticket.
Beyond the physical, his, uh, becoming stronger, becoming more skilled. Bronson also had some spiritual growth along the way. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, it went from just sort of being about opportunity. At the very beginning of the campaign, it was just opportunity. It was like I was exiled from the house and just trying to basically make ends meet, and then you know Gator comes along and it's like, okay, I could pretty much get paid to keep you alive. That's fine. But over the course of the campaign, like he he sees, since very early we got the chance to have the second challengers, tag. And so like that just like opened up a huge amount of potential with life. It went from uh just trying to sort of scrape an existence by and just make make it work to form quickly like solidifying and crystallizing a plan and like, oh, maybe I can get everything back. And that was a huge motivator for him. And also just like going from this being means to an end to deeply caring about all his companions was a huge thing over the course of the campaign as well.
There was a point in which Bronson lost the war of attrition, right? So he goes to Groomsh and he asks, give me the power,
Yeah,
give me the
yeah, that was
strength. I need
sort
it
of a
now.
deathbed.
I can't do it on my own. I need you. Um, and Groomsh answers the call. For
Yeah, I think
Bronson
that
in that moment, what was that feeling like?
I think that's a good setup. Like honestly, I was like, I thought about like how he would do that and when he would turn to Grumsh and like lean into the orc side, and it was literally staring death, down the barrel. And also, I think it like if we ever do revisit this, I do think that finding more of his orc side is going to be sort of Bronson's like second arc. I think that he would uh, especially since he felt a connection with Grumsh, um, that he would want to, or at least sort of entertain the idea of, okay, well I've organized, I've reorganized my family, and now I'm the champion, at least in my own mind. Whether or not there's a champion still to be named. Uh, I think that one thing he would want to do is start looking more into the orcish side of his lineage, whether or not that's like finding his dad, or just starting to like organize orcish war bands, under just like he did with the Celtigars. It's like he may see that as a potential of like, what, I got this whole untapped resource of potential uh you know troops, boots on the ground, and a whole different culture that he could explore, and become a part of again, and bridge that gap between his humanity and his orcish, not brutality, but more um primal side for sure.
Sure, yeah. We ended the season right as the dragon fell. Sometimes you see these seasons of a TV show that end abruptly with a bit of a
Hmm.
cliffhanger, and that was intentional by design.
Always got
There,
to leave them looking for more.
that's right. There are lots of threads that are still left untied, and we talked a little bit about Bronson wanting to investigate his orc heritage and
Hmm.
tap into that. If there was a season two, where would you like to see that story go next?
Oh, definitely tracking down his dad. Like finding out that his dad is around and is maybe not a villain, but for sure a an antagonist. Because he's got a bunch of stuff to unravel with that too, especially now that he has a son. In that, like, is is his father's? I mean, he was born of rape and pillage, right? So I mean, like, his whole existence was due to horrendous crimes. And so trying to rectify that, or sort of find a way to get past that, and maybe understand more about the orcish side of him would definitely be a huge a huge boon there.
All right, well, I think we're going to wrap things up pretty soon here, but before I do, I want to get a little bit of feedback from the player here, and
Hmm.
we're gonna score the campaign. 0 being the lowest, 10 being the absolute highest, in a couple different categories here. I
Uh-huh.
want you to give me a score. So let's start with, how would you rate the social interaction in the campaign?
Oh, 10.
10.
10. I had a blast with all of the other PCs. All of the NPCs were incredibly well done. The social side of things it was excellent. Like everything, like the world felt alive. It felt like, it was active around us, that things were happening, whether or not, I sort of, you could kind of like phrase it like, it's like if the Super Nintendo is on, the game is going, right? Well, it felt like, that it was still going, even whether or not we were present, at that very second. And also we kept it alive a lot in the Discord too. Like there was so much that we, sort of like plotted and planned and joked about and everything like that. And I think that really like laid some good groundwork for a lot of things that popped up in the campaign and everything like that. So it was great, man.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
I'll say hands down, like before I score anything else, like this is hands down probably the best campaign I've ever played in, because one, it made it all the way to the end. Like the idea that you would have the standard trope in D&D is like, yay, we played, and then like someone can't make it the next week and then the campaign falls apart. Like that's way it happens so often. And to have we went almost a year, week in, week out. We took a couple of weeks off, but everything worked out and everyone came back for the most part. And we managed to keep it, stuck together with duct tape and with spit and polish. And like it was awesome, man.
yeah. The party deserves a lot of credit. As a DM, it feels like a true blessing to have a group of people who get along with each other, who show up, who do what they say they're going to do, and are smart enough to talk about things that are not going to separate people. Right? I think
Right.
we all did a great job of picking each other up and motivating each other. That reciprocal relationship where you guys are excited about the game and you role play, which makes me excited to create more content.
Right.
And it just worked. It was a bit like catching lightning in a bottle, and it's nice to kind of cut things at a high point rather than watching the campaign peter out.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
that
Yeah, it
feeling
was
is
it was
mutual.
it was really nice to have a bunch of folks with, we all had varying levels of experience. Like I know Kuma and Sean both have run way more games than I ever have. And but I try to, know all the mechanics, so I'm not waiting around or anything like that. But having everyone with those different experience levels, but still everyone got the thing that all players should get, is that you're all trying to tell a story.
Yep.
It's not a board game. Like if you want to play war games where it's like I want to win today, then go play Warhammer. Like,
Mm-hmm.
just do or do Command and Conquer, or whatever your RTS is, or go play Baldur's Gate, and just smash people in combat all the time. Like from the get-go, we all were sort of bought into the idea of like, I want to see where this story goes. And so that also helps in keeping players happy too, because like the maturity of the players in terms of not getting upset over like, yeah, I didn't do great in combat. It's like, yeah, but that doesn't matter. We're moving on. We're telling this big story. It's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And having people who buy into that and truly buy into it, is a rare thing and an amazing thing when it happens.
Yeah, it certainly felt that way. So okay, next category here. How would you rate the exploration of this game world that we created?
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot. I think all of the different territories were had their own uh, character. Their
Yeah.
own identity. I think that we weren't ever precluded from like going anywhere that we wanted to.
Right.
I didn't feel like we got railroaded into anything. And even I mean, like, even from a player standpoint, even if we were like, yeah, we're getting railroaded into this because this is where we have to go, like, it still felt natural and like, we understood, like, yeah, well, yeah, we're going here because one, it makes the most sense, and two, it's where the story's going. So it did never feel like you guys have to go to the castle because that's the encounter that I made today. Like it was all very natural feeling, and yeah, everything felt fleshed out, and it just like I mean, even down to like the choice between the two roads where we encountered the cocaine bears. Uh, I mean, like it's like as soon as when that happened, it was we were all knocking at ourselves. It's like, yeah, we did this to ourselves because we decided we wanted to go this route. So it's like you don't have anybody to blame but yourselves.
So, as written, the party definitely did not go to the territories in the order you were supposed to, and nor did you travel there the way you were supposed to. This whole
Yeah.
concept of room number six
Hmm.
was completely ad libbed and unplanned. It was something that is part of that song Hotel California, right?
Hmm.
And it seemed like a funny little jib to throw in there, and then the party became hyper fixated on it. And then all of a sudden it was
Yep.
like, hey, this is a great way to cut out travel time.
Yep. Yeah,
And
you've
that's
you've done
okay.
an awesome job as a DM in that situation. You're like, hey, I've just found myself a shortcut where I don't have to explain or like deal with a whole bunch of like terrible seafaring episodes. Like
Yeah.
sometimes, especially guaranteed, the players will get fixated on the most wild minutia, and like I'm guilty of it 100% of the time because that comes from like how I play video games, where I'm like, I'm gonna 100% this game.
Yeah.
I'm gonna find out everything there is about this, and I'm gonna make sure that no stones left unturned, because I don't want it to be like, have a recap like 5 sessions later, be like, well, if you guys had just checked that door, like, so we ended up being very thorough when it came to that stuff.
So we didn't actually get a score from you on that exploration of the game world.
Oh, a 10 on that too.
10.
You're
Oh,
gonna you're gonna
sweet.
get tens across the board, man.
Well, while we're riding high on tens, how would you
Mhm.
rate the combat throughout
Combat
the
was great.
campaign?
10, I would do 10 on especially the back half of the campaign. The combat really got high stakes a lot of the time. And like, because at that point too, like, okay, when we can run roughshod over most standard people, I mean, like, the whole basis was that we're like the cream of the crop, right? So I mean, very few standard people are going to be able to hold up against us, and so the supernatural stuff that you ended up breaking out, and then even, oh man, like, shit, just even our paranoia, like, you weaponized our paranoia against us in territory one, where we like used Liamon's tiny hut, we didn't trust the charcuterie plate, and like we barred the door, like all of that is just like you let us go on it, and it felt great, and so like I enjoyed it a lot, man. I would give it a 10. Like I felt like everything was challenging and had stakes involved without without being unfair.
So, just to be devil's advocate in that regard, to combat, if you're looking for just stock encounters right out of the book, the way that we ran our campaign was did not stick to the rule book, right?
Oh
And
no,
and
no.
that's
Yeah.
that's what we've heard before. That hey, if you see this kind of enemy, they have these skills. Uh,
Right. Yeah,
uh,
it's hard to separate the metagaming and then that, but I think we did a pretty good job. I know Solomon and me both liked to try to go. okay, well, what do I know about this? You know, like I really tried to lean on the like, okay, I have player knowledge about this. Has Bronson read a book? You know, like to explain why he would know about this too.
Yeah.
You know, and so that I think we used well. But then I mean, you just making stuff your own was that's a great way as a DM. Just be
That
like, nope,
was
these zombies don't do that.
Yep, absolutely. Everything was adapted to the situation, right?
Hmm.
So if it made sense to remove an ability, add an ability, tweak the hit points or the damage rolls, uh, just to make combat longer or shorter,
Hmm.
those kind of things were done to make it feel really organic and to cut out a lot of the fluff. We had a
Yep.
couple sessions that ran really long early on, and
Oh
from
yeah.
from that point on, we got a really good feeling for how do we keep this to a tight 2 hours, 2.5 at the most,
Right. Yeah.
and
Numbers get really like in combat, you've got like anytime you're dealing with like vast numbers of uh pieces on the board, it invariably just takes longer because of how many dice rolls you have. People move different directions and stuff like that. Uh I from my side of things tried to make sure that like I was never one of those hangups. But then again, my character was also very simple when it came to combat. Roll dice, hit things like that. That's pretty much what it came down to for Bronson was uh, smash things, try and get high numbers. And so definitely, I wanted to try and streamline my side of combat as best as possible. But yeah, like going from like wild numbers of combatants to like a single combatant that has multiple moves and legendary actions and stuff like that. I think again I think you found your stride fairly early on and really did a great job with it.
well, thank you. I'm going to take that compliment, put it in my pocket, and I'll pull it out when I'm not feeling so great.
Well, yeah,
Um,
and you got it recorded so you can just like listen to it on repeat.
Final score here. Rate the total overall story experience.
10. I
Yeah.
enjoyed I like wrestling and D&D. Like it's perfect. It was incredibly unique. I've never done anything like that before. It felt natural. In that like it was a good blend of stuff that you brought versus the D&D that everyone wants to play. And it made for an incredibly compelling time.
Well, hey, let's leave it on a high note, right? Um, it's been a pleasure getting to know Bronson, and who knows, maybe we'll see him again down the road at some point.
Oh
Pete,
yeah,
thank you for your time. I really do
thank you.
appreciate you being a player in the game.
Yeah,
It,
thank you
it
for
would
running it. Like it's not an easy thing to be a DM. Um, I've had it fall apart just because I just don't have the time and energy. Like it's exhausting. And to be able to stick with it all the way through a campaign and maintain the energy level and maintain the enthusiasm and keeping everybody on board, like it's a lot. It's herding cats. And then those cats are also trying to like undermine all of your plans, as they do. And so I think you did an excellent job of herding our particular herd of cats.
well, hey, I don't think this will be the last time that we play a game together. So
For sure.
until then, let's catch up again sometime soon, and that's going to be it.
All right, man.
All right, take care.
Goodbye, young lions.